Alright, I thought I would share my history on how I create electronic music. For starters, I could go over every single experience and moment in time with pieces of electronic gear and music history, but I don't want to do that. I want to talk about the mediums really quickly at the youngest age I remember to now. So there's a lot to cover, and I could write maybe 8,000 to 10,000 words on the subject, but I'll just condense it here in this video. So there are images on the screen, or you can just hear me. So here I go. I remember a very long time ago, there was this Habbo Hotel clone, or the other way around. There was this game called Coke Music, where you'd be this little tiny avatar, and you would get you drink Coca-Cola and you would get like codes on the back of it, and it's kind of like this strange Animal Crossing virtual reality zone where you buy Coke products in this isometric, again, Habbo Hotel took this from it, would be, the pool's closed meme. But I remember going back till I was like 13, 12 and playing this in school. And my brother also was addicted to it. And because it had a music theme, there was a music program inside of Coke Music, and it was pattern based. So there'd be the drums, the vocal, the leads, whatever. You wouldn't record audio into it. It would just be samples being played back. So you'd have something cheesy like get up, come on, and like some dumb break beat and like and all that kind of stuff. You would play said songs in the lobby, and then you would get more points to buy. And then you would invite like strange like avatar girls on the internet so you can like omegle like sext. It was really strange. And my username at the time was Namco Bandai Guy because I liked Namco Bandai because I liked Pac-Man and Dig Dug and Tekken, and I was a gamer even before the whole gamer culture. So, but mostly my brother would be playing this, my older brother, and he would just be making these really corny sample songs together and whatnot. So my older brother, he also had an interest in electronic music like I did, even at like 13, 12. That's what the internet does to you. And I think he was in our local Best Buy at King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. And he came across this cheesy program called Kinetic by Cakewalk. And it's kind of a consumer product, just like how what Magix, Magix, they're into with like Magix audio cleaner or whatnot. And it's basically you play a bunch of notes and it plays back this really corny synthesis program. But it's the same as Coke Music. You get like A1, A2, A3 patterns, and you put them in there and you record it. And I remember my brother had a song called My First Song. And this was before MySpace, and it was to a WAV file. And I made a song too, and I had a girlfriend, supposedly, this is like puppy love, like 5th or 6th grade, right? You don't even know at 14, 13, you're my girlfriend, boyfriend. So like I showed my quote unquote girlfriends a song I made in Kinetic. And the way I did it was I shared the raw WAV file through American Internet Express Messenger, AIM, and she downloaded it. And one time I put a big song in there and my program crashed. And this is like Windows 98 to XP. Probably was an XP when we just, but at the same time using that on the family computer and making music, pretty middle class and bourgeois. But I have some very funny, strange memories about it. I wish I still had that program. Reminds me of Viper. Viper made music, But what you were supposed to do with it is that you were supposed to rewire it or use its export function into Sonar. And I also remember my brother going in the middle school and, asking, how do I make hip hop beats? Lol. And his friend gave him a CDR burnt copy of Sonar, which is, Cakewalk's premium DAW. And if you had Kinetic, you could rewire, the protocol, sync it together, I think, into Sonar. And Sonar is exactly the same. But yeah, you can record audio and whatnot. But I don't think my brother got anything into it. He probably just uploaded a bunch of Amen breaks. and played it back. And being 14, 13, I think I was 13, I didn't even know what it was. I just thought it was just like some sophisticated computer programming language. I believe from that same CDR hack, my brother got a hold of Reason 3 as a cracked edition for free. And, I'd watch him play on Reason, make drum and bass, quote unquote, songs, and then I would play on it. And I have really great memories of being 13, 14, messing around in redrum, playing with the preset packets, not knowing anything about mixing or mastering or sequencing. My logic of sequencing was like, you make a drum beat, there's a synth line that's incredibly random, another random synth line, and then before you know it, you have like 8, 9 tracks, and it's so loud and annoying. I don't know. I used to draw on pencil and paper in my cartoon sketchbook what I thought how to make the song, and I was thinking to myself, how did they make Stardust's music sound better with you? Did they make it in Reason? And this is like early primitive caveman stuff, but I like Reason a lot, and I liked Reason 3, but it was so tedious messing with MIDI messages and drawing it with a little pen, and that's why I liked Red Drum. You just click it, So that, I was really into video games and cartoons, and I couldn't care less about professional music. It's always been like that. And that's why, for Super Nintendo, I had Mario Paint Composer. And for the Game Boy Camera, I had Trippy H, which, at that young age, I liked Atari Teenage Riot, even at like 15. And Alec Empire used Trippy H on Nintendo Teenage Robots, and I loved it so much. And I had to get 2 Game Boy cameras and a mixer, battery-operated mixer, and have like 2 Trippy H's going off at once. And I also liked Mario Paint Editor and the samples. And instead of using the Super Nintendo, I would use either an emulator or I would use Mario Paint Composer as a separate Windows file. And I'd making funny chiptunes and calling it electronic music at like 14, 15, because I liked that. I was like, why would anybody use like Reason or Sonar or Kinetic? It doesn't make sense. And by the way, how I recorded this music was like direct through Audacity and creating like a virtual cable inside the computer and letting Audacity record it, or even like getting a microphone up to the speaker and being super primitive. And I did this when I was lurking on You're the Man Now Dog. And, the creation of whole meme culture comes from ytmnd.com. I didn't make an account. I made my first account. It was Cat Tanks. And that was 2006, 2005. It might have been 2000, and then I made some other alt accounts. But the real, my biggest alt account was pilleater. And that's been kind of, which was originally an alt, has just became what I'm known for, or something like that, on You're the Man Now Dog. I'm one of the users that has the most sites of over 600. Not like Umfold or anything like that, or Murdar Machine, or Darkwang, but still, those were the early meme days. When I got older and I was a teenager, I was really into chiptune music, and MySpace music was everywhere. And so, being young, hot and handsome and metalcore with white dyed hair and piercings, of course, I'm going to release a 7-inch record with not even wax. This was published by Peter King in New Zealand. And I also made a 3-inch CD disc. I was really into 3inch CDs. There was a sound blog I used to follow called Mutant Sounds, and the download server at the time was RapidShare or Mega Upload or Gatorfile, which are kind of like Gator hosts, which don't even like exist anymore. I mean, MediaFire is still there, but it wasn't what it was like a decade ago. I remember when Depeche Mode's Sound of the Universe album came out, or Kaim FDM's Tohova Boho, and just going on MediaFire like the next day, and then somebody uploaded it. Then, the internet was much more like the Wild West, and it was awesome. But I had the 7-inch record, and I played shows with it, quote unquote. And it was really popular. You know, there were other musicians like Animal Collective, Chroma Lab, things like that. And all I had to do was be handsome, be an Instagram model, and do this little 7-inch and sell my Nintendo Teenage Robot ripoff. And that's what kind of music I liked. I did flirt with LSDJ and Nanaloop, but you know, I made some songs in Nanaloop and LSDJ, but I never really got into it. I knew the whole. I did buy a modded Game Boy, but I only used the modded Game Boy for Trippy H, and yeah, I didn't care about like the MIDI sync or whatnot. I was like, why would you do that? These are fun programs. They're very quirky. You know, I thought music was cutesy and twee at the time because I was cutesy and twee. So they were options, but I did flirt with them. Also, during that same time, I was, of course, making music with cracked programs, and originally I wanted to be a video game programmer. And I liked this indie game, quote unquote, as Dr. Lunatic Supreme with Cheese. And the guy, I think Mike Hommel, he used a really early edition of Fruity Loops. I founded a cracked edition of Fruity Loops. And at that time, Fruity Loops had like this anime avatar, which was like a Vocaloid, but she was like this green-haired girl, but she was like Fruity Loop Chan. I found her really attractive back then, and like would used to masturbate to like some of the hang tight pictures in early 2000s. I don't know. I always liked the mysticism and like the hot woman in the doll. They don't have that anymore, but like I used to think that Fruity Loops was the only program you could run VSTs in. I mean, I was aware of Cubase, but I thought Cubase was difficult. And I liked how Fruity Loops had the audio and MIDI mixed together, like as an instrument file, just like Reason, but Reason couldn't run VSTs, only Fruity Loops could. And so I'd be downloading like D16, 303s, and 909s, and mixing with them and just seeing what I could do. But I just made a lot of funny band songs, and it like Tune Tracks, Easy Drummer, and its guitarist. And I was in this band called Zombies on Skyscrapers, Death's Obituary. There's another one. Iron Face, whatever. I was the drummer. So, you know, a bunch of dumb young kids below the age of 20 are going to use stupid stuff like this. And so I made some electronic demos in there, and they loved it. I would upload it to MySpace Music. And I can't even find that old MySpace Music anymore. But I think the real thing came to me when I was like 18, 19, where I was able to successfully get download the ISO of Rebirth on a CDR and run it into my Windows XP computer. To this day, I love Rebirth more than I do Reason. The ease and elegance of two 303s and 808 and a 909 with a mixer and the effects and the pattern chaining. I loved it so much. It felt like a video game. There was another Flash program, Audio Tool, which was more laid out and like a skeptomorphism of like if you had all the hardware in front of you. I liked that one a lot, made lots of songs in that one as a teenager too. But Rebirth and that, I made these kind of funny acid house, digital hardcore, realicide type of songs. And I don't know, it's kind of like electronic e-grind, but not really. It was just like noise music, but pressing randomize and Rebirth and trying to say it's quote unquote Chicago house, but you're just some like an 18-year-old middle class white kid trying to make interesting music, you know, but you just never heard a 303 line. I mean, I love Rebirth so much is because no one has ever, like the 303 emulation in Rebirth is so nice. It reminds me of like those Chaim FDM's Audios album, or even like MDFMK. It has that nice square wave that's very apparent on like Witness or Rubber Rouser. But I would move on to hardware. And this is my favorite hardware rig, this one. And I have great memories of being 18 to 19 to 20 with this rig. And I had a Future Retro Revolution V2. which I directly bought from Jared from Future Retro. I had a Acid Lab baseline. I got on eBay for 200, and also for 180 was I had the Korg EM1 and the Korg ES1, the sampler with like a really low sampling rate of 32. And the best thing you could get to like a 808 and a 909 was the EM1. I did have an X Bass '09 by Jamox I bought for 300. I then sold it, and I think that's now like a rarity piece. But I would plug the Jomox X Bass '09 into the Korg EM1, and I love the sounds of that. It was like the close, and you get this kind of fake acid house through the bassline Acid Lab. But again, the Future Retro and the Acid Lab sounded so different from a 303. They had the 303 uniqueness to it, but like they didn't call it slide, they called it a glide on a Future Retro, and you got these like wacky modular synthesis noises instead. And I have good memories, and I just wish I had this setup again. I'm very nostalgic about the Korg EM1. For the ES1, I did again got it recently, and I realized how like low the sampling rate was. And I mean, samplers have came a long way, but that was like the only thing where you can make like a fake 808 or 909 was on the ES1. But I loved MIDI syncing like with 3 MIDI cables, these devices through a mixer. I absolutely loved it, and I would bring these everywhere. I was really into a person named Technobox at the time, and you know, I was all into that. Some other devices I had, I composed a lot of my music in an Akai MPC 2000 XL with the floppy disk. When I bought it for $500, they also gave me a floppy to USB converter. So I would drop the WAV files into this converter, and it would write it onto these floppy disks. And then I would put it into the MPC 2000 XL, and I would compose a song from there. I did that with literally my first synthesizer, the Dave Smith Mofo. I bought directly from him with the keys. I also had the carrying case bag too. It's still the same price for $600 a decade later, but I love that thing a lot. I also, at a flea market, had a Roland TR-77, like literally Roland's first drum machine, very much akin to Suicide or any organ topper you would have. I did have the Roland MC303, but I never really made songs in it. I just used like the funny as a module, you know, thinking you could just make the synth noise from it. My brother had a Roland SH32 too, the blue funky one, and I always wanted a Roland MC09 like Technobox had, but never got those. But these were the other instruments that I used, and you know, technology has certainly came a long way since the MPC 2000 XL, and I now use the MPC-1, and I do like the MPC-1 more. Now, there was also a time where I went to college. You know, this is like a 2-3 year jump. Being young, I didn't want to focus more on music. I wanted to be me, you know, meeting friends, girls, importantly girls. And at this time, I was at Temple University in Philadelphia. I was an Asian studies student. I was a complete middle-class, bourgeois normie, thinking, you know, especially if you have a trust fund, your life's completely normal. All your dreams are going to come true. I'm going to have a Japanese wife. My kids are going to be anime. I'm going to speak fluently Japanese. I would hang out at Tyler School of Art in the workshop. I bought a Korg MS-20 Mini with my college trust. I borrowed a copy of Ableton. I had a Scarlett interface. I would run the MS-20 through a Space Echo reissue and the mono delay. I would do vocals through the BitSpeak VST. I also had some video synthesizers too. I was super out there. You know, at that age, I was, if not the most normie, pitchfork, super gentrified, normative, blue-pilled hipster you can imagine. And life was good at the time. I felt a little anxiety, but I didn't want to think about that anxiety at the time. So I recorded this project called Pizza Dog Studio on SoundCloud. And I really love that album. And to this day, I would like to have an MS-20 Mini back. I sold, again, I sold to some of most of these instruments. I don't use Ableton anymore, but the process of how I created music was very magical during this era. Pizza Dog Studios, great stuff. I love it. But I'm going to fast forward here because I can't cover everything. So I think this was around 7, 8, 9 years ago. I was with my hip Chinese girlfriend at the time. I sadly did not have a Japanese girlfriend anymore. I had a Chinese girlfriend. And I was with my cool college friends. We're in Wildwood, New Jersey. And, we were making sandcastles, doing what young, cool people do, listening to M83 and Dan Deacon would do. I came across this little mall, the Boardwalk Mall, and they sell Magic the Gathering cards. And I liked old Magic the Gathering cards, and I liked this card called Dejam Dejin. It was basically a 5/5, and for 2 black, you put it down, but it does a damage during your upkeep. I knew it was in the Arabian Nights booster pack. So there was literally an Arabian Nights pack of these. There was 4 of them in this little blue thing left. And it was on sale for $16.75 or $6.75 per pack. I went up to the person and I said, I'll buy them all. And it was about $20, $30. I showed it to my guy friend after like an hour, 2 hours later. I'm like, look, I got these cool vintage cards. And he was like, how did you get Arabian Nights? And I was like, what are you talking about? So those are one of the rarest cards ever. And then I thought to myself, it turns out those cards were actually $675. And the person who was selling them put the dot between the 6 and the 75. And I just went out with these cards, and my friend said, put them on eBay. I told my girlfriend too, and she couldn't believe it. So a week later, I put them on eBay for auction, and I got $1,600 and sold it all. So I literally got $1,700 being in Wildwood, New Jersey with my cool young friends. And my girlfriend didn't believe me at all either at the time, but I sold it. And with that said money, I bought Reason 9. And yeah, this was like 6 years ago, wasn't it? I'm trying to remember. This was like 6 years. But I got an Apogee 1 too, as basically a microphone interface for my MacBook. And this was my first jump into Reason since Reason 3. I was completely neglectful of Reason. I wanted to focus on other things, and but yeah, it was about 6, 7 years ago, and yeah, I got back into Reason just when Reason 8 went to 9, and I was starting to make music again and record vocals and instruments through the Apogee 1. Now, I was very nostalgic of the past because I loved this documentary film when I was 13, 14 called Moog. I also had the CD soundtrack. And when Atoria just began, Atoria had a mini Moog VST. And at the time when I was young, I thought it sounded so accurate. It's advanced and upgraded to this day, but I now have the new Atoria Mini Moog VST. It's not one of my favorite VSTs. I always had a dream to basically make an entire album on this VST and make like the Moog cookbook type of soundtrack. And other than free loops, there was this program called Mu Labs, which was free and you could run VSTs, but I hated the MIDI drawing in Mu Labs and how you record things. So I got the new, Reason 9.5 came out, and then I could run VSTs in Reason, and that was fantastic. I didn't have to use like Rewire or anything like that. Also during that time, I was also into hardware again because I was almost done college. I was also having girlfriend issues or whatnot, being depressive. It was very different from Pizza Dog Studios era. And these things came out 6 years ago. The TR8 and the TB3 as a 303 emulation, TR8. There was so much hype around these machines. And this is kind of the start of like nostalgic revolution for like Gen Xers and boomers. You know, now finally the corporation, Roland, is now making an accurate clone. And so I got two TB3s and a TR8, and I made like this album called like Trashcore or King Trode, and upload those to SoundCloud and whatnot. I still have a TB3, but I sold the TR8 and the other TB3. I love this machine. I love the TB3. It's one of my favorite devices ever. I hate how people are just like, oh, it's green or something. But go quickly, you know, I could go into the hardware techniques and the real-time stuff. I love the Roland Boutique series. I remember when the first three came out, the Jupiter, Juno, and the JX P3. I got the JX P3, JX, whatever, because it had knobs on it. And I love the knobs, and I remember just recording my, like, some vocal synth trap songs on them. I did have the red SH 01A. I sold it, got money, and then got the gray one. And now I regret, and I wish I had the red one again. I love these instruments. I have every single Roland Boutique, even the new TR 606 Boutique that just came out. I love these. I love how they have a built-in audio interface inside these machines too, and how small you can just bring them anywhere, and just if you want to jam with your friends or just play with them. I love them. They're like a MIDI controller plus an actual VST inside a box. These are like currently my favorite machines right now. To wrap up and to conclude, you know, I said I would make this short. I'm close to the 30-minute mark now for rambling, but I do a lot of tracking now. I love renoise, and there is fast track and the Schism tracker, but I use renoise. I mean, that's the most straightforward tracker ever. Just upload some samples, actually trigger your VSTs through this, or use it as a MIDI controller in another program like Reason, or, you know, and it just makes sense. It's like a giant drum machine, but you're ticking off actual synthesizers or softwares. And the way now I think about music is through tracking, and I just love renoise. I don't have to draw stupid MIDI notes anymore. I'll only use Fast Tracker to convert certain files into renoise because there's a renoise file, but I'll only use renoise to control things, and sometimes makes funny like electronic minimalistic songs, you know. My DAWs of choice, yes, I still use Reason, yes, I do use renoise, and yes, I do hardware stuff and recording, you know, audio through like a cheap interface and whatnot. But I work everything now in Bitwig, and I do use waveform traction, and I master in Ozone. Bitwig is just so hands-on. It's kind of like, it's so easy on the eyes. It isn't as advanced as like Logic or Pro Tools or even Cubase, where there's subscription services, or I feel Bitwig, it's really playful with automation. You get Ableton Live's Clip and Classical Arranger, and I just think the Arranger is so much better. The only time I use waveform is if I still want to rewire rebirth inside of it, or I'm trying to go to a single screen approach, and I don't feel like recording audio when I use waveform traction. And I think of waveform traction as basically a traction waveform. I think of it more like Reaper. You know, it's more of like a single DJ version of Reaper. And Bitwig, I love it a lot. And I open up Reason as a VST inside Bitwig. But again, I still do a crux a lot of it in Reason, renoise, controlling renoise through Reason inside Bitwig and whatnot. So I have this very sophisticated programming, but I love making music through these programs. I also want to finally mention that I absolutely love the Roland MC 101. It's such an improvement from the MC 303 or even those older 909, 505, those huge things now condensed into a battery-operated, little cute 4-track machine with a drum track, bass lead, whatever. I really want to get a hold of the Roland TR 6S instead of the big TR-8S with the whole FM synth. So you can just plug this in with your TB3, and you have something to go also with your boutiques as well, having control all of that. So this is a different way to making music, but I recently recorded some new music with this machine. Again, to wrap up, there's many different ways to make music, but this is recently how I've been constructing electronic music. Thanks for listening.
This is Pilleater, and originally this video was recorded and produced on December 18th, 2020. However, I also remastered the audio, creating a louder file, and I have re-uploaded it on youtube.com/pilleater on today at February 8th, 2023.